Hello, welcome to the Basketball Soapbox. I'm your host, Daniel Daly. This is episode 54 as we kick off the first day of NBA free agency. A couple of guys staying put, a couple of guys on the move, and a couple of rookie extensions that are significant in the landscape of the NBA, especially for these smaller market franchises. Episode 54. We're getting a lot of feedback on the channel, especially with the shorts. That's awesome. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and share as well on YouTube and Spotify. But let's get into it. Guys that are re-signing with their current teams here. Very interesting day of the first day of free agency here. Let's start off with Portland. They are giving Jeremy Grant the big max contract, 5 years, $160 million. And my thoughts on that is just obviously Portland's operating under the guise of Damian Lillard staying there, wanting to continue to build there. And one of the moves that they were going to make was re-signing Jeremy Grant, and where that money was going to be allocated to and how long it was going to be, the years, the money. And we got a doozy there. 5 years, $160 million, 32 annually, I believe, for Jeremy Grant, who was a nice young player. Obviously not a go-to guy or anything like that. I think of him along the lines of Aaron Gordon. Ironically, Aaron Gordon was in Denver. They won a championship with Aaron Gordon. And Jeremy Grant was kind of in that role. And I kind of felt like he could have been that role in Detroit. He could have been that role in Portland with Damian Lillard. And obviously, Portland is looking at him as a big piece as to continuing to build with Damian Lillard. And, of course, this is all predicated on if this is enough to keep Damian Lillard in Portland, right? Like having that type of contract committed to Jeremy Grant right now, I think is a big deal because I think it does. I think first of all, I think the NBA salary cap is going to go up in a year or two. So these numbers that look large right now are not going to be looking that significant. So I think $20 million, the new $20 million in the NBA is 32. So that's how I'm looking at it right now. And I think that's the case here with Jeremy Grant, where those $32 million a year look like it's going to be significant and put a strain on this franchise down the road, especially in 2 years. That contract is going to be like $20 million today. That's just my opinion on it. But I'm also going to laugh if Damian Lillard requests a trade after Portland does this, because now if they do that, if he does that, Portland is basically stuck with Jeremy Grant on this max contract with these young guys. And that's not a bad thing because he's not completely out of their timeline a little bit there, but he's a guy that can go forward with and you can kind of play off of and be a veteran around these young guys that are on the team. And he can get his numbers, of course, as well. But I'm just going to laugh if Damian Lillard requests a trade after this, because Portland's obviously operating the guys that they're going to keep Damian Lillard, build this team up, build a contender with Scoot Henderson, Shaedon Sharpe, all those young guys that they drafted. And it's going to be interesting to see how they maneuver going forward, seeing if there's any flexibility, especially with Jokic Nurkic, and trying to see how he goes there. Let me just put it here, I think. Oh, no, good. And just really how they move forward. It's just going to be interesting to see how that goes, and especially Portland committing to Jeremy Grant like that. It's going to be interesting. Moving on to Kyrie Irving, who signed a 3-year, $126 million deal with the Dallas Mavericks, staying put there in Dallas. And obviously that was Dallas's best move. I believe if they renounced him, they could have had like $25 million in cap space. But right now, looking at the free agency landscape and their assets requiring in trades or draft picks, they really don't have that. Like the only attainable guy that they have in trades is probably Tim Hardaway Jr. at this point. They really don't have a lot of movable contracts or movable players or draft picks to put with those contracts to get significant help for Luka right now. So the best that they can do is sign Kyrie Irving. And it's 3-year, $126 million deal. And I think that's right about where it needs to be. I think that's the smart thing for Dallas to do, given their current situation, right? Like seeing Kyrie Irving walk and then looking at the free agent landscape and saying, hey, we can get this guy, this is going to be a nice addition. I just don't see that as a big money player, a big move that Dallas can make outside of signing Kyrie Irving. Maybe they can potentially set up a trade. I think December 15th is when that signed players in the offseason are able to be traded. So keep an eye out for that. If Dallas gets off to a slow start this year, expect Kyrie Irving to kind of be on the trade block again and probably be a little bit more sought after by teams that have first-round picks, probably in a position to win, want to take a next step. Dallas definitely has that angle to trade Kyrie Irving if things are looking bad come December, come January. They have that option at least. So I don't think that's a bad move for Dallas. I don't think it's a bad move for Kyrie Irving. Get your money. The sources were saying that he was going to go to the Lakers. He was going to be meeting the Lakers, meeting the Suns, even the Celtics. And I'm like, none of these teams really have cap space there to maneuver to get Kyrie in that type of manner. But we saw him. Maybe that's just a leverage play. That's what NBA players and agents do. Use other teams to gain leverage to get more money. And Mark Cuban was committed to Kyrie Irving apparently for 3 years, and it worked out for him. Not going to be mad at that. Moving on to Brooklyn, Cam Johnson signing 4 years, $108 million. Obviously, he was in that trade for Kevin Durant with Mikal Bridges, and obviously putting a stamp there on what those two guys were able to do and improve their play with more touches, with more shots. Brooklyn committing to the young core, which I think is another smart move. They're really not going to be able to make a splash otherwise without those guys. I think those two guys are a good tandem. I think they play both sides of the ball really well. And that's a good thing for Brooklyn. You need these young players to produce, and Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson are two of those guys that can produce on a high level, and they're going to continue to keep their team together. Moving on here, we have Kyle Kuzma, 4 years, $102 million in Washington. People were expecting him to get a big dollar contract this offseason. He has been playing really well, and that was expected, right? Like Kyle Kuzma's a solid player, putting up, I think, close to 20 and 8, close to those numbers. And that's just a good step for Washington. One of the smart moves that they've been making all offseason, trading Bradley Beal, trading Porzingis, trying to get some type of assets and kind of start this rebuild. If Kyle Kuzma is going to be a part of that, whatever the case may be, he's still a young player. He can help. He can be the veteran. He can get his shots. That type of nature there. And if anything, if they wanted to flip him at the point in time where teams see him as valuable or is playing well, they can potentially get a couple first-round picks for him, maybe a player that they can develop and grow on their terms. And I think that's another good move for Washington. I think it's a smart move. And we'll see how that continues to go down the road. Moving on to probably, I think, the first move that was made today, Draymond Green re-signing with the Golden State Warriors for 4 years, $100 million. I thought it was going to be 5 years, $100 million. I thought he was going to extend a little bit there. But that makes sense to the Golden State Warriors to keep that core together of Curry, Clay, and Green. I think that's a smart play for all those guys involved, right? Like, they've been together, 12 years together, 13 years together. The only other team that I can think about that did that was the San Antonio Spurs with Tim Duncan, Ginobili, and Tony Parker. Obviously, Tony Parker ended up going to the Hornets towards the end of his career because he didn't want to mentor Dejounte Murray and come off the bench and things of that nature. But Manu Ginobili, Tim Duncan, and Tony Parker usually were together, and probably the last tandem that you can think was together that long, past 10 years, probably outside of the Showtime Lakers. I think they got to 10 years with Kareem, Worthy, and Magic, or at least Magic and Kareem were together for that extended period of time. So seeing this core keep it together, it seems like Jordan Poole's the trade there that got out and traded him to Washington. And puts this core back on the timeline, right? Like, they're trying to give it a couple more shots at it. Obviously, this contract is team friendly. Works out for Green. He gets his money. He gets to stay in Golden State. Continues to be the anchor for that team. And we'll see if Golden State's able to add to that, possibly extend Clay. That's another move that they're going to have to make a decision on at some point in time. We'll see what they're able to do with the Golden State Warriors with that. Jakob Poeltl stays in Toronto, 4 years, $80 million. It's going to be $20 million annually. Really a good signing for Toronto, at least whatever they're deciding to do. We'll also get into the second part that they did with the guys moving around. But yeah, just a good, solid move for the Toronto Raptors, keeping a nice guy that they can develop and keep developing and He's a good shot blocker, a good solid player, came from San Antonio. We're going to see what he's going to be able to do, but also can be a nice trade chip. $20 million for a nice center that can get possibly 10 and 10 block shots at the rim. That can also be a potential trade chip for the Toronto Raptors with Jakob Poeltl, but he's going to be there for a little bit, and we'll see how that goes. We also have Herb Jones getting an extension. I think it was 4 years, $54 million. I didn't write that down there, but that's a good, nice rookie extension for him, a guy that made defensive team, I believe. A guy that's really developing his game, a nice young player for New Orleans. And after all the news with Zion Williamson, it is good to see some good news for the New Orleans Pelicans. I think he's going to be a really good player for them and continue to develop his shot. Nice signing, nice solid signing for the New Orleans Pelicans. Rui Hachimura stays out there. I think it was 3 years. I want to say $51 million. Was it 51? We'll see, but I'll check the numbers again. Staying out there in LA, which is a nice, good signing for them. Really having an impressive playoffs, really improving his shot in the playoffs so far. So hopefully that continues. Well, hopefully we'll see if that continues for the Los Angeles Lakers and Rui Hachimura earning the bag this summer for his case and returning to the Los Angeles Lakers. Kobe White, I believe it was 3 years, $40 million. I did not write that down. But he's staying in Chicago, obviously looking for a bigger role there, especially with the news of Lonzo Ball possibly not returning this season after those nagging knee injuries, and hopefully he's able to come back at some point. But Kobe White seems to be stepping up in that role there with Alex Caruso and those guys there. We'll see what they're going to be able to do there in Chicago for those guys staying put. Also, Chris Middleton, I believe it was 3 years, $102 million that he opted out of his contract and then re-signed with the Milwaukee Bucks, which is a smart move for the Milwaukee Bucks. They needed to keep that core together at least and see if they can keep Chris Middleton, see what they're going to do with Brook Lopez. We'll see what happens with that. He's still a free agent. And also, I think Drew Holiday also needs to be extended for the Bucks, but everyone thinks that clock is ticking on the Milwaukee Bucks. So for them to keep a guy that was a part of that championship team, obviously was hurt last year coming into the season, but kind of found his footing a little bit. We'll see if they're able to continue and see if he's able to get back to all-star form as well there. And that will do for the guys that are staying home, staying put in the NBA during this free agency. Don't forget to like,